Just before your old self dies, something unexpected happens. The life you once knew suddenly feels too small, too tight, almost suffocating. It's like wearing a skin that no longer fits, that restricts every movement, that stifles every impulse to grow. Most people mistake this moment for failure, for loss, for incapacity, but what they don't realize is that life is simply pushing them to break through the shell they've clung to for so long. Life is quietly, insistently inviting them to surpass limits that once seemed impossible. In just a few moments, you'll understand why this discomfort isn't an ending. It's the silent, almost secret signal that transformation has already begun. It tells you that you are closer to your new self than you've ever been. Have you noticed how the mind clings to routines, even those you know no longer want? You tell yourself, I'm tired of thinking this way, tired of repeating the same cycles. And yet, almost without realizing it, you fall back into them. Why? Because the old self isn't just an isolated habit you can switch off. It's an entire system, intricate like a web, where every thread holds the others in place, preventing everything from collapsing. Beliefs, expectations, fears, doubts, automatic reactions, they all feed off each other. They maintain the shape of who you have been, even when it no longer serves who you are trying to become. Think of it like the operating system of an old computer. The hardware still works, but the software is outdated. Everything slows down, crashes at the worst moments, and resists any attempt at updating. That's exactly how the old self behaves. It keeps running background programs created years ago, programs that once had a purpose, but now block your progress. And unlike computer files, you can't just hit delete. First, you need to recognize the system, observe how it works, understand its patterns before you can reprogram it. See it in practice. A small, insecure thought appears, almost unnoticed. Something like, I'm probably going to mess this up. Your body reacts instantly with that familiar tension, that chill down your spine, that paralyzing anxiety. This discomfort makes you hesitate, retreat, or even avoid the situation entirely. And ironically, this avoidance only confirms the very thought that started the cycle. It's a silent, subtle loop, but incredibly powerful. And this is exactly where most people give up. They believe they've failed, that they have no control, that the old self is invincible. But in truth, this is precisely where change begins. It's in this discomfort, in this silent resistance, that you find the golden thread that will guide you to the new version of yourself. Because the old self, as dominant as it seems, is not infinite. It's just the old system trying to maintain its shape, trying to prevent collapse. And every hesitation, every fear, every thought that arises is, in fact, a clue. It's time to face it head-on, recognize the loop, and start rewriting yourself. And what comes next isn't easy. It isn't quick, and it certainly isn't comfortable. But it's inevitable. The old self begins to dissolve, not to destroy you, but to make space. Space for something bigger, something more real, something you can't yet imagine. See, I really wasn't ready. And that tiny, almost imperceptible thought transforms into an invisible cycle, running day after day, silently repeating itself in your mind. And because the brain values what's familiar, it allows this cycle to solidify, to become the default mode. Even if it's painful, even if it's blocking your way forward. Psychologists explain that the brain is designed to conserve energy by repeating patterns it already knows. Imagine walking the same trail through a forest every day. The ground wears down. It becomes easier to follow that path, and so you keep taking the same route, simply because it takes less effort than forging a new trail. Even if that path leads in circles, it feels safer than stepping into unknown terrain. Your thoughts work in exactly the same way. The old self convinces you to stay on that familiar track, not because it's good for you, but because it conserves energy, avoids effort, and protects you from uncertainty. The problem is, these familiar cycles never exist in isolation. That small voice of doubt, what if I fail, isn't just doubt. It keeps alive an entire larger system of fear, and this fear spreads like a silent shadow. It creeps into your hesitations, shapes every choice, and ends up influencing entire areas of your life. A single fragile thread supports the entire complex motherboard of the old self. Remove the doubt and avoidance weakens. Remove the avoidance and fear begins to shrink. But as long as these connections remain active, the web holds strong and the outdated program keeps running, silent, powerful, invisible. And this is where it gets interesting. When the system finally starts to crack, don't expect smoothness. Don't expect order. Your mind senses the rupture, and the discomfort spikes. Old patterns may even intensify, as if they're fighting to defend their own existence. Doubts feel louder, fears feel stronger. But this doesn't mean you're regressing. On the contrary, it's a sign that you've reached the limit of the old design that shaped who you were. Your system resists because it knows collapse is near. That's why clinging to old routines isn't failure. On the contrary, it's proof that you're pressing against what no longer serves you. The tension that feels unbearable is actually evidence of cracks beginning to form in the structure you've carried for so long. And it's in this very moment that power emerges. Not by ignoring or pushing away these patterns, but by finally seeing them for what they are, systems you once needed but no longer do. Awareness is your first tool for transformation. Name the cycle, identify the outdated software, understand how one thought feeds another. This is the opening point, the narrow crack through which change begins to seep in. Once you see the system, you're no longer trapped inside it. You can start guiding it in a new direction. And when you change even the smallest cycle, the others begin to lose their grip, as if each thread of the web is gradually letting go. So the question isn't whether your old self will collapse. It's how you'll handle the moment when it does. When the system finally falls apart, it doesn't look like order. It looks like chaos, pressure pressing against every edge of your mind. And this is exactly where we need to confront it head-on. How does it feel when a part of you starts to dissolve? It isn't calm, it isn't comforting. There's no soft music, no clear map. It feels raw, intense, almost suffocating, like the air itself has thinned, requiring effort with every breath. You feel your own body and mind cramped, too small to contain who you are becoming. It's like being trapped inside a shell that no longer fits your size, pressing from every side. Nothing fits like it used to, and the more you try to ignore it, the stronger the pressure grows. This pressure isn't your enemy. It's a sign that something deep inside is being reshaped. But at first, it rarely feels like progress. Often, it feels like collapse. Many people mistake this phase for hitting rock bottom. They assume it's depression, weakness, or proof they've gone the wrong way. But what's really happening is the collapse of a system that can no longer support who you are. It's like watching a bridge shake and crack under stress. The tremor feels terrifying, but it's part of the natural process before something new and stronger can be built. One of the most powerful images of this process comes from the caterpillar inside its chrysalis. From the outside, you'd think it's resting peacefully, simply waiting to grow wings. But the truth is very different. Inside, the caterpillar completely dissolves. It transforms into a kind of living, chaotic soup before reorganizing into something entirely new, a butterfly. This phase is messy, fragile, almost unrecognizable compared to the creature it once was. No one celebrates the caterpillar's liquid stage because it doesn't look like progress, it doesn't look like growth. Yet, it is precisely this process, so confusing, so quiet, that makes true growth possible. Something similar happens inside you when your old self begins to dissolve. Research on identity shifts shows that people undergoing major internal transformations often feel disoriented, confused, even mournful. Suddenly, everything you believed in reveals itself as uncertain. Beliefs that once felt solid now crumble like slippery sand. Habits you once defended fiercely begin to irritate you so much that you can barely tolerate them. And as this unfolds, it feels like you've lost your balance, because in a way you really have. You've lost the part of yourself you clung to for so long, even if it no longer served you. Imagine someone who has always lived believing, "I'm not good enough." Perhaps they've built their entire life around that belief, avoiding risks, sticking to safe routines, keeping their feelings small so that nothing or no one challenges that pattern. But the moment that belief breaks, the person feels lost, disoriented. What do they do without that old identity? Who are they if they stop repeating the same script of fear? This is the strange pressure that arises when the old script falls apart, but the new one hasn't yet been written. This is the stage of dissolution. It's the moment when everything you knew is consumed. And if you've ever tried to let go of a habit or identity, you know just how high the resistance can be. Doubts scream louder, fears feel sharper, not because you're failing, but because the system is fighting to survive. Just as fire burns brighter before it goes out, the old self often makes more noise before it breaks. The hardest part of this stage is that it doesn't feel like a beginning. It feels like an end, like you're losing too much all at once. But in reality, the discomfort isn't the end. It's a threshold, the exact point where something new can emerge. Think of the deep pain in your body before it regenerates stronger, or the ice cracking before the water can flow freely again. The same happens with your mind and identity. Old structures need to loosen, collapse, and release before there's space for something new to emerge. Progress always begins at the point of greatest tension, when the system can no longer sustain itself, when the cracks are too wide, when you feel the core can't hold. That's the moment renewal begins to sneak in. This sensation of breaking apart is, in fact, the exact sign that something new now has the chance to form. What emerges after the collapse isn't chaos or emptiness. It's the space where alignment begins to take shape. And what sprouts from the ashes of the old system isn't grand at first. It arises quietly, almost hesitantly, like the first green shoots pushing through frozen soil. Delicate, uncertain, easy to miss. But just because it seems fragile doesn't mean it isn't real. In fact, this initial phase is when the foundation of your new self begins to form, stronger, more adaptable, more capable than anything you've carried before. When old patterns collapse, a sudden space opens where automatic reactions and mechanical impulses once lived. And in this empty space, the brain begins creating new connections, architecting different, unprecedented, unexpected possibilities. It doesn't happen all at once, and it's not perfect. You might notice yourself catching an old thought, pausing, and, for the first time, choosing differently. It isn't a dramatic transformation visible from the outside. It's subtle, like noticing a room feels lighter after opening a window. Change builds gradually, step by step, but each small choice stacks upon the last until a completely new system begins to emerge. The challenge is that this phase doesn't feel comfortable right away. Think of a snake that has just shed its skin. For a short time, it's exposed. The new layer underneath is sensitive, vulnerable, not yet ready to face the elements. This is how rebirth feels inside you, fragile, delicate, yet full of potential. A rebirth that demands patience, courage, and the willingness to stay in discomfort, because it's in this unstable ground that the new you is being formed, hidden from the eyes of others, but already taking shape, brick by brick, bud by bud, within yourself. The security of old beliefs is gone, but the protection of the new system isn't fully formed yet. You're growing, but you also feel vulnerable. And this vulnerability deceives many people, making them believe they've regressed. They expect renewal to show up fully formed, instantly strong. But true strength only arises after exposure, after you stay long enough in the discomfort for resilience to bloom. Neuroscience helps explain why this phase feels so uneasy. When your brain starts forming new neural pathways, the old ones slowly weaken. Imagine a road you've traveled for years suddenly being closed. Now you have to explore a new route. At first, it feels confusing, winding, inefficient. You question yourself, get lost, take wrong turns, feel frustrated. But with practice, that new route becomes clear and familiar. Over time, it can even become faster than the road you've always used. This is exactly what happens inside your mind. The old system of doubt, fear, and hesitation loses power because you stop traveling it. And the new path of clarity, confidence, and presence gains momentum because you keep choosing it. You might notice this happening when that inner voice that used to whisper, "You're going to fail," starts sounding less convincing. Instead of shrinking back, you think, "Maybe I can handle this." This seemingly simple shift is more than a new thought. It's the seed of a completely different system. Because when you trust yourself in one decision, that trust spreads to other areas of your life. You hold yourself differently. You speak with more confidence. You take actions you used to avoid. Removing a faulty piece, like fear, triggers a complete reorganization of your internal network, now centered on strength, certainty, and peace. And this change spreads. As fear begins to fade, space opens for momentum. Without the weight of hesitation, you move faster. Without the fog of doubt, you think more clearly. It's not just a small improvement, it's a chain reaction where new systems activate together, lifting you higher than you ever imagined. What started as fragile shoots breaking through the ice eventually grows into roots strong enough to support a new season of your life. This is why true transformation goes far beyond mere survival. Survival is just staying upright. Evolution means becoming something your old self could never have imagined. The caterpillar didn't survive by clinging harder to what it was. It evolved into something entirely new. And the same is happening inside you. The dismantling of the old wasn't a loss, it was a clearing. It was creating enough space for something truer to breathe. The so-called death of your old self isn't something to mourn. It's the birth of a version of you that isn't divided by fear, nor weighed down by constant doubt. It's the emergence of an integrated self, finally able to fill the space that once felt unbearably tight. This new system doesn't operate on reactive fear. It operates on alignment, confidence, and forward movement. And if you feel this fragility now, if the discomfort feels sharp and unfamiliar, remember, this isn't a step backward. It's the sign that your rebirth has already begun. This is where urgency meets hope. Because once you allow this new system to breathe, everything around it begins to move in sync. And the only direction from here is forward. The old self isn't dying. It's clearing the ground so that something wiser, stronger, and more authentic can take its place. What feels like an ending is, in reality, just the opening scene of something new. Don't resist the tension you feel now. This pressure is proof that your transformation has already begun. It's not your fall. It's your signal. If you recognize that you're in this space, claim it. Say it out loud or write in the comments, "Reborn." Mark this moment. You are not getting lost. You are finally stepping into the version of yourself that has always been waiting to emerge. If you've made it this far, it's because something deep inside you is calling for more. For a purer truth, a sharper awareness, and a more intimate connection with the unseen force that gives shape to the visible. And now, I want to share with you something that will expand your consciousness even further. Get ready to take the next step. I present to you The Map of the Higher Self, a powerful e-book born from my most intense and authentic experiences. It brings together practices, insights, and mental keys that will guide you on a path of clarity, presence, and inner awakening. But it doesn't stop there. When you get the book, you'll also receive free access to the Sacred Library, an exclusive digital collection of rare, forbidden works removed from our history, hidden texts that reveal what has been concealed from humanity for centuries and is now within your reach. This map is not just a book, it's a tool for transformation. If you've arrived here, it's no accident. This is a sign. You're ready to elevate your perception and take control of your own reality. Click the link in the pinned comment and dive into this journey of self-knowledge with courage, focus, and awareness. And don't stop here. I've handpicked 2 essential videos that will expand even further everything we explored today. Choose one and keep exploring the deeper layers of your being. Remember, the truth is not found in the noise of the world, but in the silent voice of awakening consciousness.